How did you first get involved in art, and kind of what was your first memory?
Well, it's really interesting. I was born in Colombia in South America, and my whole family moved to the United States in 1980. And my mom was a nurse, and she used to work with homeless kids in the weekends, volunteering. So I always thought I was going to be, do something with the medical profession in mind. But when I came here, I mean, we didn't know we were going to move to the United States. It just happened really sudden. Um, I didn't study English. I was studying French in high school. So I moved to the United States with my family when I was a junior in high school. So I didn't speak any English, and it was really frustrating not being able to like communicate and talk to people, even though when you learn it in a foreign language, you reach a point where you understand what's going on, what's being said, but when you want to express yourself, it's really frustrating because you can't, you just get, it becomes difficult. So I remember one time my mom had a cold, so I went to the store to buy some medicine to the drugstore, and the lady behind the counter couldn't understand what I was asking her, and it was really frustrating. So I remember going home and getting a piece of paper and a pencil and just kind of like letting all that frustration out. And then it just kind of like dawned on me, it's like, wow, I mean, if you have a good drawing or a good painting, you could actually express yourself, and anybody could understand you without, any problem. So I had a free period, and I decided to take my first art class as a junior in high school, and just kind of changed my mind. I had an amazing art teacher, and after the first trimester, I decided that I wanted to like study art. So I told my family, my parents, and they were not really super excited about it, but they were very supportive. And so when I finished high school, I really wanted to go to art school, but I mean, we had no money or anything. So I had a friend who was in the army, and he said, "Oh, you should join the army, and they can help you pay for your school." So I joined the army for a couple of years, and then the Army Reserve, and they helped me pay for undergraduate school.
Oh, wow.
So when I was in the Army, I took some classes at the community college in Northern Virginia, and then when I finished that, I came to VCU because they had a really good reputation, and so I transferred. So I finished my undergraduate school, and then I went to grad school, painting and printmaking, and it's been great. The years in art school were the best years of my life. They're wonderful. So that's how I became an artist.
What influences the art that you make right now?
Gosh, that's a tough question. Well, when I was in graduate school, my work was very political. I was thinking about my cultural identity. My country was going through a lot of turmoil politically, so I was making work that really dealt with the situation in Colombia. And then I went through a period where I was just when I spent 10 years here, it was like I was thinking about who I was, and so I was dealing with work that was kind of exploring my cultural identity. And then gradually I just got to a point where I found myself in my studio one time with all the work that I had from grad school and all the work that I accumulated. So it was like packed with stuff, and my father was really sick and passed away of cancer. So I found myself I feel like I needed a change. So I took all my work and just went out to this field and just kind of burned everything.
Oh, wow.
And I decided I needed a fresh start. And after I did that, I decided that I wanted to start a body of work where the representation elements in my work were as important as the non-representational elements. So like the hammer that you saw and all that, I reached a point where actually everything had the same importance, like, the representational elements and the negative space, everything was really well balanced and everything. And I've been teaching art since I finished grad school. I've been teaching everywhere. Right now I work I'm the head of the art department at St. Catherine's. So I remember one time years ago, the Virginia Museum had a show of art from Tibet. And part of that, they used to have these monks who will come and chant and created this beautiful sand painting. And people will come and listen to them and watch them work. And I remember they worked on that for 6-7 weeks, and when they were finished with it, they took the sand painting and dumped it in the James River. And to me that was so shocking, and it's like, wow. So I kind of changed my approach and the way that I work. And to me, what is now important is what you learn from doing. You know, to them, what it was really important is being together, having the same experience, creating this thing that it was going to disappear, and that didn't matter. The fact that they were just together, that was what it was important. Is just the experience and what they were learning from working together. So I've been trying to kind of follow that model, just kind of like I'm trying not to like be too concerned about, you know, what the product is, but more about the process. And I try to teach that to my students, but they, you know, it's really hard when you're a teenager. I mean, we're conditioned to work on something for 6-7 hours and then have something to show for. Otherwise, you feel like you're wasting your time.
Mm-hmm.
So I tell my students, you know, sometimes when you're making art, things don't work out, and that's completely natural, and I'm not going to penalize you for that. So, you know, this is probably the only class where you can actually fail and still get an A in your as a grade, because, you know, it's really all about improving your work and learning from materials, and that's the whole point of being an artist. You know, it's not really unless you're working on a commission. To me, I feel fortunate because I can just explore what I want to do since I have a job that pays my bills. Mm-hmm. But a lot of artists in town who, you know, make a living selling their work, is really difficult for them to, because you always have to figure out what people want, and it's really hard to do. So you have to make a lot of compromises sometimes when you're dependent on that. So I feel fortunate to be able to teach what I love, and, you know, it gives me a chance to really explore what I want to explore. So gradually my work, I got away from representational work. It took a long time, you know. Sometimes I teach at the Virginia Museum in the summer times, and I had some people who come and say, you know, I really want to make abstract art. And they think it's just going to be so easy just to get in front of the canvas and start, you know, putting colors down, and it's really difficult to do. And, you know, a lot of abstraction really starts with nature and with something concrete that you gradually, you know, it's a departure point, and you gradually abstract that idea onto something that is more universal. So for the past, I don't know, 7-8 years, my work has been non-representational. It's changing a lot. My work used to be really kind of hard edge, geometrical, and now it's becoming more loose, more intuitive. So right now, the way I work, you know, it's like this. I put something down without any idea what's going to happen, and then I just look at it and intuitively react to it and start playing around with color, with marks, shapes, until I'm happy. I just had a show at Quark, and one of the things that I noticed is my work was changing with the pandemic. When we started the pandemic, my work, you know, it was really frustrating to be at school, and then we had to go online for a few weeks. So planning became really challenging and difficult. So my work, I was doing those stripe paintings, kind of like that over there that you see, because it really brought me, it became almost like a meditative activity. I would come after school to my studio and just start doing these marks, and it just really helped me center, and that really helped me a lot. So while I was doing that, I was working on the show for Quark, and, you know, my work was changing, so I decided to do 100 pieces of art on paper just to figure out what I was dealing with. And I never realized how much I enjoy working on paper. You know, I started doing all these pieces, and I decided to do 100 pieces. And I mean, if you go to my website, you can see that. And it's been so much fun. So what I'm doing now is I'm actually working on small pieces like this. And this is kind of helping me develop a vocabulary to transfer into something larger. So that's what I'm doing. So I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah. How important is the process of the work to you? Like, is that what you get the most enjoyment out of, or the finished piece when everything comes together?
To me, it's all about process. Although it's really nice when you finish that people, you know, respond to the work, and it's even better when they purchase the work. Sometimes I feel guilty when someone buys the work because I feel like I'm having such a good time playing around with materials. That's one other thing that I tell my students, you know, when I'm in the studio, you know, people just take themselves so seriously, and, you know, I try to take a whimsical approach to the work. So I'm here, I love materials, playing with colors, and you know, just having a good time, experimenting, and then just things begin to happen, and you know, that's kind of the way that I work. It's all about mostly process.
Gotcha.
And the most difficult thing is knowing when to stop. And one of the things that really helps me a great deal about that is just looking at the work. So every time when I make coffee in the morning before I go to work, I just sit here for a few minutes and just look at the stuff that I have.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of helps me make decisions on what to keep and what to move away from and things like that. So.
What do you do when you realize maybe you have gone too far with the work? Like, what do you do with the work after that?
One of the problems that I have, I usually paint over my work, and drives my wife crazy. Funny story, I had some old work on my website, and I had this woman who called me and said, I really like, and I actually number my paintings instead of giving them titles. It's much easier to keep track of, and I never think of titles until I have to. Yeah. So to me, I decided just to number my paintings. So I just call them like composition 1, 2, and so on. So this woman really liked this painting, and I came back to the studio and I had painted over, and I said, I'm so sorry, but I painted over, and this is what it looks like. And she goes, oh, okay, thank you. And she didn't like what I had done to the painting. So there's bad things about painting over your work. It drives my wife crazy because I never have work for shows and things like that because I'm always painting over my work.
How do you balance both being a teacher and kind of making your own work and selling it? Like, how does that kind of come together?
I don't have any kids, so I don't know how people with kids do it who are artists and teachers. So basically, if I'm not teaching or doing something for the school, I'm in my studio painting. Now that we moved here, we have a big yard, so I'm also like working on the yard, which is good because I need to be more active. So that's kind of forcing me to go outside and work. Mm-hmm. But it's a matter of discipline. I mean, for my show, when I was younger, I used to be able to get up at like 4:30 in the morning to paint for a couple of hours before I got ready for work. But now it's becoming more difficult. So I usually just come home, maybe take a nap, and then if I have a show, work for a couple of hours before I get my schoolwork done, if I need to do anything to get ready for the next morning. So it's really discipline. It's a matter of being in the studio. Even if what you're doing is not working out, just being in the studio is really important. So I'm trying to be in the studio every weekend. And if I have a show, a few hours after work, so.
A lot of quantity to your work. Like you said, you made 100 pieces. Is that really important, I guess, to your process and kind of figuring out which compositions work better than others?
I think it is really important because when you only work on 1 or 2 pieces, everything becomes too precious. So you're afraid of making mistakes. You're afraid of taking chances. So when you have 100, you're just trying different things out. Mm-hmm. And eventually when you have 25 pieces or 30 pieces here. For instance, I usually work on multiple pieces at a time. So I just started this like this morning. Mm-hmm. So I got like maybe 7 or 8 pieces. Oh, wow. And then when I'm working on large pieces, I take a break and work on the small pieces just to try something different. I also discovered, I think I'm becoming ADD. I didn't realize that you could actually become ADD when you get a whole haircut. So what I'm doing now, I have to have like 6 or 7 projects working on one. So I moved from one thing to the next. So I get bored working on the same thing over and over again. But when you have multiple pieces, you can actually start seeing patterns and things that are reoccurring and happening all on different places. Mm-hmm. So it just really helps you develop a vocabulary. Your work becomes stronger. You're becoming aware of what colors you're using, shapes, and so forth, and you begin to see different patterns happening. So, like I love materials, and one of the things that I love working with that I didn't realize that is I'm using a lot of cold wax, which is this beautiful matte surface. Oh. I also have been using this wonderful paint, which is vinyl paint. I don't know how you pronounce flashe or flash. Mm-hmm. It's highly saturated and it's amazing. So I usually start my work with water base with this, and then gradually I move to oils later on, and I finish that with oils. But I was telling you how important it is to be playful, and one day I was just playing around cleaning my brushes, and I noticed that you can get some really cool effects. So I started working with soap and ink and creating these really cool circles. So I've done a whole bunch of pieces that deal with this. You can actually increase the size of the circles by adding more soap and changing what you use to make the bubbles. So all these are actually created with soap and ink, which are really cool, fun. So yeah, but unless you play around, like see all the circles right here, there's actually our soap bubbles on ink. And you can create some really cool textures with that. So I also have been using a lot of acrylic inks, which are really wonderful, and they're completely compatible with acrylic, and it's great. So play around. So I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah. Well, that's